Please tell me your full name and when and where you were born.
My name is Benjamin Travis Dotson, but I go by Travis. I was born in Corbin, Kentucky, and I've lived in London for most of my life, except for the time I was in the military. So I'm 46 years old now. So other than the 5 years I was in the military, I've lived in London.
Do you have any family members that are serving or have served in the military?
My grandfather, his name was Estel Dotson. He served in World War II as a medic and a hero of mine. And he was in the Army and served, and landed D-Day and all kinds of, all over Europe, and a hero. And so I was inspired by him. And but I went to the Marine Corps first, and I had some friends and along the way that just made me want to try that route, and I loved it. And so that was the Marine. It's a little different, but he was my inspiration for joining, for sure.
What were you doing before you entered the service?
I was in high school. I guess my senior year, the start of my senior year, I was 18 years old. I went to the recruiter. I'd been talking to the recruiter before, and so I remember it like it was yesterday. I finally came in. I did like a little pre-ASVAB thing, and I was like, I'm signing up. And I was 18 already, so I was like, I'm doing this. And shortly after, I went to the MEPS in Louisville and swore in, went through the pulley program that the Marine Corps had, and started getting in shape and getting ready to go, to boot camp.
What happened when you departed for boot camp and during your early days of training?
It's really I'd read the book Boot, and so it kind of gave it insight. Now, of course, I watched Full Metal Jacket, and I listened to all the people around me that had went before. And you get there, you're like, this is worse than I'd ever imagined. And it wasn't the physical side. Yeah, it was hard. It was the PT, the constant yelling, but it was all of a sudden you're having to grow up, and, mom and dad weren't there to, run and ask for please help. And you were alone on this island, Paris Island. And, I remember getting off that bus, and the drill instructor welcomed us very pleasantly to Paris Island, where, how many people they've trained there, and then get off, pleasantly tell us to get off his bus. I'm kidding. And stand on the yellow footprints that were there. And I remember that moment of just pure terror, like I'm not going back. And then going through receiving and learning how to, we was walking around with tennis shoes, and it's just, we looked ridiculous, but we were the new people on the island, and we didn't know how to march, and we didn't know anything. So the first time they got us together, it was pure chaos, pure panic. I didn't know how, just little things. I didn't know how to address. I mean, I knew, but I never, with the stress of having to write a letter home, I didn't know where to put the addresses. I was freaked out so bad. I was like, wrote it on the back. I was like, there's something wrong here. And it was just this overwhelming stress of just like, they are really getting in my head about some things. So, but I looked around, and everybody was going through the same thing I was. So I was able to relax and be like, okay, I'm not alone here. There's a bunch of other, hundreds of other guys here that are going through the same thing I am. So relax, listen, and go forth. It was the hardest, craziest thing I'd ever seen. It was a whirlwind of emotions, of terror, of people just screaming and screaming and screaming. And it had its purpose. It had its purpose, and we'll get to that later. But it was the scariest thing I've ever done. Now, fast forward a couple months into boot camp, got it all figured out. PT was easy. The physical training, I'd made it all the way. I think I was 4 weeks out of graduating. They break it in phases. So I was starting my third phase of training, which is the last phase. And we had just marched back from weapons or did a field. We was out in the field for a week, and I developed a blister on my heel. No big deal. Band-Aid, Neosporin, whatever they did, treated it, but it got infected, and I ended up with, I'm sure it's staph infection, some kind of cellulitis in my foot, and I couldn't walk anymore. So I was going to sick call. I was trying to get treated, and I remember they dropped me out of my platoon. My drill instructor came in. He's like, "You've got to go back to medical. You're not going to graduate with this platoon." And so all that, it's like, oh my gosh. And so it was 4 weeks of getting healed. And I didn't even know this place existed. I walk in to this medical platoon. It was late at night. It was weird. And this medical drill instructor, they have drill instructors everywhere. So this drill instructor, a platoon of injured Marines recruits. And they're just laying in, some of them are casted, some of them bandages on their heads. And I'm like, what is going on here? I didn't know there was that many people that were injured. And I looked around, and the drill instructor's like, "Your rack's over here. Make a phone call if you want to. Do you want to stay on the Paris Island, or do you want to quit?" And, here I am. I'm home now. I've just got dropped from all my friends that I've made, my platoon, my bunkmate who, is from New Jersey. We became friends through that because, you're with him the whole time. Going through the pain of it all. And now I'm put back in a injured platoon. I'm like, I don't know so all these emotions, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I? And they asked me, "Do you want to stay or do you want to quit?" And I remember that, I'm like, all these flashes of these thoughts just go racing through my mind. I miss my mom. I miss my dad. I miss all these things that I could be like, oh yeah, I'm done. I quit. And I remember just this, like, you're not a quitter. And so I immediately, it feels like it took forever to make this decision. It was just probably immediate. But all these things raced through my mind. I was like, I can go home. I'm so homesick. I've lost everything, so I can go home. And I was like, no, I'm staying. I was like, this recruit is staying. And it's like, make your phone call, tell your mom and dad that you're going to be delayed from graduation. You'll write them later and tell them what's going on. Okay, goodbye. Get a phone call, blah, blah, blah. And scared to death. Mom and I'm sure dad or whoever answered the phone was like, what is going on? So they probably contacted the recruiter, see what was going on. I went into medical. I was surprised the amount of just heartbreaking stories. The guy's been there years, or close to a year. One guy had a skull fracture and would not quit either. And he would just waiting to get healed up so he could pick back up with another training platoon. And I was just inspired. But then it was heartbreaking because you had a lot of guys that were sitting in there and the morale was horribly low because you couldn't train. It was just constantly you're hurt, sick. A lot of people were threatening suicide. And I'd spend most of my days watching, doing suicide watch and fire watch over these poor recruits. It was awful. I was like, I got to get out of here. So I would go get IVs to get the infection out, 3-4 days a week. Finally, it started healing. I was like, all right, I'm ready. Well, you didn't get to go straight back into a training platoon. So I switched up. So now, if you think about it, I was there 4 weeks. My platoon had just graduated. We're gone off the island, graduated boot camp, and I'm still there. So I don't get to pick up. I had to go back into something called physical fitness platoon. So it was nothing but running, pull-ups. It was, you wake up in the morning, you start running, and then you start, then you eat, and then you run and do push-ups and pull-ups and sit-ups, and then you eat again. And then it repeated for 3 straight weeks. They would not let me go back until you completed 3 weeks of that. So I would have gotten in pretty good shape. But I've been hurt for 4 weeks, so I was trying to get back into it. So I remember getting back in the platoon. I went from 1st Battalion to 3rd Battalion, and where I picked back up was still 2 weeks behind where I'd already left off. So I did 6 weeks longer plus the 6. I did like 2 boot camps. It was horrible. I mean, but I made it through. I was supposed to graduate like in September, October, somewhere in there, and I don't get off the island until almost Christmas. It was awful, but it was enjoyable, good experience. But back to the quitting, that choice of being able to say, "Hey, I'm done." Now, if I would have quit that moment, I probably would have been a quitter in everything. And oh, you want to be a police officer and it gets too tough for me, now I quit. Oh, you want to be a whatever in life, a good husband, a good father. No, I can't handle it, I quit. So quickly, the determination that I started learning in boot camp is, hey, I want to do this, and I'm going to do this. I've talked about being a Marine for 3 years or whatever it was at this time. Am I going to be a quitter, or am I going to come home like, just too tough for me? Or am I going to get after it, persevere through this, and say, hey, I can do anything? And early on, it gave me a sense of like, you can complete a task, and from then on, there's nothing too tough. Right now, I've taken on the role as interim police chief, and it is all about. It is extremely tough and a lot of decisions, but the quit is just not in me. I'm going to persevere through it and see it through. So that's my boot camp story, and it was horribly long, but it's about not quitting, and that you can do it if you put your mind to it. So yeah, that was a long one.
Did you receive any specialized training?
So when I entered the Marines, I was like, I must have been the most gullible person ever. I just want to be a Marine. So I was like, I want to be. It's like, hey, we got an open contract. I was like, I'll do it, because it's time frame. So I was like, I'll do whatever MOS they throw at me. So God just taking care of me. Obviously, I ended up in motor transport. But when I got to the Fleet Marine, I did that training in Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and I got permanent duty station at San Diego at Camp Pendleton. So when I get there, they were I reported to a combat engineer battalion, and I was like, this isn't motor transport. So I get into a report, end up over in a maintenance platoon, and I cross-trained, like in vehicle recovery. So I ran a crane. So that was perfect for doing all the engineer work. So I mostly did engineering by running cranes and hazmat and things like that. I drove trucks, but it was like, oh, I'm going down a convoy. I would drive trucks and pull motors and set beams, and we built my battalion battalion I was in, 7th Engineers, we built the crucible that Marines still do today. So we got to do that. It was a neat part of it, seeing how, like, hey, I've got a medal for building the crucible. Now these guys it is tough. I reckon it's several hours, a couple of days worth of hard training that they do now to complete boot camp. So I got to see it built and help build it.
Will you tell me about the barracks and food and physical regimen?
In boot camp or in where? Just in general?
You can tell me in boot camp to start with,
So
if you like.
boot camp to PT was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday were the big run days, the outside training. It always revolved around push-ups, pull-ups, running, set-ups of some sort. A lot of 8-count bodybuilders, like they call burpees today. That was always part of, the calisthenic side. Nothing was under a 3-mile run. And I got up to 20 dead hang pull-ups because I couldn't do the kipping back then. But I learned it was the ugliest pull-ups you could get, but I was getting up there. So I got that. My run, I was a horrible runner, still hate running. But when it came to set-ups and push-ups and upper body stuff, I was pretty good, pretty strong. But my run time, I was always in the turtles. You broke it up with rabbits and turtles. I was back in the back with the turtles when it came to PFTs, the physical fitness test, and I was always back in the back running. 3 miles you had to run under. I think it was 28 minutes, which is I could never do now, but I was always in that 22 to 24 minute range, which is awesome. But when you got guys running, under 18 minutes, these guys are flying around. You see, they put you in the back so you wouldn't block them. But so Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays were big on those outside training. Now, in between, we did a lot of, barracks in, trainings. They had the quarter deck. If you got in trouble, they sent you up there and they PT'd you in front of everybody, and a lot of flutter kicks and push-ups and mountain climbers. A lot of in the barracks, like push-ups and dips off of your foot lockers and lifting up, carrying out your whole entire barracks and setting it up and outside and then bringing it back in. It was constantly, even when you drilled and you did your close quarter drilling and you marching, it was all about the physical fitness, getting in step, getting in time. The better shape you were, the sharper you looked on you're performing any kind of drilling ceremony. So yeah, you get in pretty good shape. And plus rucking, I still like rucking marches instead of running. You put pack on my back, I can walk. You say go run a half mile, I'm like, oh, forget it. But and so when I reported out to California, I thought California was just going to be beaches. No, it's straight mountains out there. They're some of the highest mountains I've ever seen. They notorious places. The old Smoky and some they don't even want to repeat what they used to call these mountains out there that Marines have to hike up. And we have one behind ours called Engineer Hill. It was 3 miles. It was a 3-mile slight incline. You either ran it or we did a lot of ruck marches on that. So I remember one time it was Thanksgiving of 98, and they flew us out in Blackhawks. The Marines call them Seahawks. They flew us out. They dropped us off. We didn't know where we was at. And we had that 40-pound packs, our weapons, and I was a saw gunner. So I was a 240 Golf machine gun. I was a gunner on that as well. So we had all our gear, and they flew us out. And it was Thanksgiving week. It was Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And They fly us out, and I'm married, and my father-in-law and mother-in-law are coming out, and they walk. It was 20 miles, full gear in the dark all night long. We have a Warriors breakfast the next morning. We go home. I can't, my feet are swollen up. My knees are swollen up. Like, hey, enjoy your four-day weekend, heal up. So the in-laws are there, and they're like, oh, let's go to Disney, or let's go to Universal up in Hollywood. And I'm walking around, I'm just dragging. I'm like, I can't feel anything. But that was some of the most fun, most hardest challenges to finish those runs and those marches. But I couldn't imagine being like, how much money did they spend just to fly us out to walk back in on Thanksgiving? Gee, thanks there, Colonel. Really appreciate it. So, but yeah, we had some Marines or not, they like to run and they like to do their pull-ups. So
Where did you serve?
So I started at Paris Island in August 8th of 1995. And I did boot camp there, went to Lejeune area in North Carolina, Jacksonville, North Carolina. Did a lot of training there. And then I got orders for Camp Pendleton in San Diego, California. And I'd never been even close. I'll take that back. We'd vacation to California. I had a great aunt that lived in near San Francisco, but I was a little boy and didn't remember it a whole lot. So when I went down to reported to San Diego, I was scared to death. But somehow a good friend of mine, Jason McCowan, found out I was going to Pendleton, and he picked me up at the airport. And he said, "Man, you're going to love it out here." And I was like, "Okay." So I stayed. I didn't know where. I mean, this was my first duty station, so I reported. And he's like, "Hey, we don't know where you're at exactly." So he put me at his barracks, and I stayed the weekend with him. I reported on I probably got there on a Friday night, and so he took care of me and got me back to where I needed to go. So I was like, I don't know what I'd done. I don't know how I would have got from San Diego Airport back up to Camp Pendleton, which was about an hour drive. I had no idea. I just luckily always had somebody there for me. But that's where I was stationed at in the Marines. Now, I joined the Guard when I got back. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I just missed the camaraderie, and so I joined the Guard here in London, National Guard, and I ended up in Brussels, outside of Brussels, in a place called Mons, Belgium, and was there for about 10 months after 9/11 happened. So we'll get into that one as well. That was a fun time. Good mission.
What were your duties?
In the Marines, my duties there were really, I didn't, my MOS was motor transport, cross trained in hazmat. I cross trained as basically a crane operator. And so we do a lot of field thing. We were constantly on deployments, and because we were combat engineers, so we built a lot of roads. So we built roads for the Border Patrol in Texas, and we built roads for the National Guard or whoever in Alaska. So I got to go to Alaska, and I'd just been married. We'd been married and moved out to my wife Lisa. She moved with me my last year, 98, 99, my last year, July. We drive cross country. We out of London, drove through Texas, down on the border, down I-10 through Phoenix and across to San Diego, California. I report back to, we had a little small apartment in Vista, California, about 5 miles from the beach. It was awesome. But I get back to my platoon. I'm like, hey, I'm back, married, so happy. And my chief warrant officer, he looks at me, the platoon commander. He's like, hey, we got a mission for Alaska. I was like, instantly volunteered. I was like, uh-oh, they'd already cut orders for me. I'm like, oh no, I'm married now. So I come back. I'm like, hey, I've got to go to Alaska. I've got orders. I'm so sorry. I didn't tell her until later that I volunteered for that mission. And she was like, so we're trying to figure out like my new bride in this unfamiliar city. And it was, bless her heart, I don't know how she's put up with me all these years. But so I got to go to Alaska. Sorry, honey. It was my fault, my bad. I hope I told her that. So I wouldn't have lied to her that's long. But it was a good mission. And I got to see Alaska.
Will you tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences?
So the friendships that you make are unbelievable. And I'm in San Diego, California. I'm not going to talk about Tijuana because this is PG. So I've got to go to some amazing events like in LA, San Diego. Got to go watch plenty of Padres games and Chargers games. And but a bunch of us got together and we went and watched the Lakers play. I think Tony Delk was playing for Charlotte and they were in town. So we drove up to the Great Western Forum and saw, Jack sitting down on the court side and all my buddies. We drive up to, 3 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever it was. It's the Great Western Forum out of Inglewood, California, and watch Kobe and Shaq play. And it was just, like these memories I'll never do again. I just can't believe I got to go see some of these things and be around some of the people I've got to be around, and the friendships that the jobs, the things you do in the military, those are forgettable. It's work. It's just like 9 to 5s a lot of time, unless you're in the field, and it's a lot of, it's different, but the friendship, because you live in those tight quarters, and every Thursdays or field days or what we called it. And it wouldn't go out and having fun. It was, we cleaned our barracks. Well, it became you're competitive. You're trying to my rooms looks better than yours. And because there's inspections the next day and you always, but the times of that borrowing vacuum cleaners and just having fun, cutting up with each other while you're doing that and going out to, going to the chow hall and eating and just chilling out on the weekends that you could, and the friendships that I'll never forget them. And my best friend, we didn't even have, so we didn't have a car, or his was broke or whatever. It was before I brought one out and before he bought one. We decided to go golfing. And whatever reason, the golf course on Camp Pendleton is beautiful. And we didn't have a car, so somebody dropped us off, but we didn't have a ride back. And it was like 10 miles with golf clubs. We walked about 8 of it until somebody finally had mercy on us and showed mercy and some pity and was like, hey, you need a ride? And we're like, please. But so those are the memories of just having fun with friends and in San Diego and California, just driving up to see the redwood trees and fishing with these guys and going out to Grand Canyon and Vegas with these, with all these guys. And sadly, about 5 years ago, my best friend, the one that we went all of these adventures, was killed in a car wreck. And I got to go. He had such a great personality. He came to London a couple times. We hung out and he got to meet my kids and my wife. And when he died, I went to Michigan. He was from Flint, Michigan, a little town called Otisville. And I got to go to his funeral and meet his mom and dad. Now, I'd met his dad when he got out, but that was years, and he'd probably forgot me. And so I got to tell him some stories that he never got to, that he was humble, he was funny, he worked on oil rigs, and he was just kind of a nomad. So he was moving home and he's settling in. He was wanting to be around his niece and nephews and his family. And so I got to go up to the funeral, and I was like, did Todd ever tell you about he was promoted by the commandant of the Marine Corps? What? What do you mean? So the commandant's the head guy of the Marines, 4-star general. I said, yeah. I said, Todd was promoted. It was during this big Operation Sea Dragon we were doing when we were the test dummies basically for all the GPSs, how battles are fought now and how you call in for fire. We were out setting these things up. So it was pretty neat the way war was fought. It was state-of-the-art stuff back then. But he was promoted to corporal by the commandant of the Marine Corps. I was like, there's like nobody at ours, but the actual commandant pinned his collar pins on him. I was like, they had no idea. I said, did you know that, all these little stories that they had no idea, and they were we never knew. So I was glad to get to be a part of that. Through that, his brother-in-law and I've stayed friends now, and he's a state trooper in Michigan, and we call each other about every 3 or 4 months and just check on each other. So those friendships that you make are just beyond. They go beyond just that person. Their family becomes like my family, and I'm sure the guys that are in combat are even closer than that. But y'all never forget him. He was what a friend.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home?
Well, so in my barracks in San Diego, they finally put phone jacks in. We were like the first crew. And, I'm dating Lisa at the time in 96, 97. We started dating. And she's at Cumberland College, and I get a portable phone or whatever they're called. And I've run up such a horrible phone bills, like $300-$400 of phone bills. It's probably more than that. I remember having to be like, hey, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this phone bill. So I got cut off a couple of times. So letters, a lot of letters written. And then I got to go home, fly home a lot. I tried to go at Christmas, spend many Christmases, but you had to choose. We got more time off during Christmas. They allowed, for us to go, take weeks off then. But I missed a lot of Thanksgivings, a lot of birthdays, and a lot of 4th of Julys. And it was sad, but you're also with your new friends and making the best out of those situations too. So, it was hard because you miss. Again, it's weird because you just start missing the things that were your comfort, your traditions. Going to your grandparents' house, Christmas Eve, those things you just kind of get sad and you miss those things. So I got to go home on 2 or 3 Christmas, but my very first Christmas, I was at Camp Lejeune, and I was guarding a motor T little compound. And I remember thinking to myself, what am I doing here? I was like, it was not like I was guarding the front. I was in a compound way off in the back that nobody was going to mess with. Nobody was there. I'm like, what is going on here? Why am I not home? But it was all about building that discipline up of, can you do what we ask you to do anytime, anywhere? If something bad happens, can you handle taking orders? And so I stood my gate proudly on Christmas Eve watching Santa Claus fly over. But it was tough because there is nothing like that, being away from your loved ones that first time. It hurts. And I still remember exactly where I was. Yeah, tough.
Tell me about the day your service ended.
So my August 8th, well, always August 8th, 95, August 8th, 99, was the days that I began and ended my tour in the Marines. And we had drove home. I'm married. We got 2 cars out there. The military moved all our belongings back. And Lisa and I drive. I'm driving my vehicle and she's driving her vehicle. She's got the dog with her. We've got a little beagle hound named Lucy. And we're driving from San Diego, California, back to London, Kentucky. Me and Jason McCowan did it one Christmas, and it took us 36 hours. We shouldn't have done that, but still, we were ready to get home. I think I slept 3 days after. I don't know why we did it. So we're driving, Lisa and I, and I'm like, we get, driving across country, and we get home. I'm like, so we move in with my mom and dad for a couple of days, and then into her dad's for a hot minute. We're like, all I ever wanted to do was be in the Marines. So I'm like, she got accepted at UK, going back to school, and so she ended up going back to Cumberland College or University of Cumberland. I don't know if they changed then. So we was like, let's just go back to London. It'll be easier. We can transition better there. I had a horrible, horrible time transitioning back into civilian life. It's my wants and desires of being a Marine all those years, and then being a Marine, I couldn't. I don't know. Still to this day, I'm like, why did I get out? But I remember my next duty station was going to be Okinawa, and I wasn't sure about logistically if we should go together, if they would even let us. And I was like, man, this is just. I'm ready to get out. I think now I'm going to do a different adventure. But I remember being so restless and was for years. I got great jobs. I got a job as a lineman at, Jackson Energy. I was like, this is going to be good. I just couldn't, just missed the camaraderie, missed the service side of it. So I was just, we quit jobs, or, not really quit, just searching. So I ended up with joining the National Guard, and 9/11 happens, and I remember going straight to the Guard, there by the state police. That day I was working for FedEx. I finally got hired as a FedEx home delivery driver I was a contractor. It was tough work. It was a lot of driving, I'd have like 5 packages on my truck, driving to Oneida in Clay County all the way to Braunston in Pulaski County. I was like, what am I doing for the? And I remember thinking, we need insurance. Lisa's still in college, and she's working at Brookhaven Christian Books, and I could use the extra little bit of money in the insurance. I was like, I'm going to join the Guard. And so I joined them. Like 2 months later, 9/11 happens, and I'm like, I'm ready to go. I need, that sense of everybody was so patriotic and ready to serve. There was a waiting list to get to join, and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. We see it, and we're like, man, what's going on? So really, we got a mission pretty quick. We were gone. We got orders, I'm going to say in December, to go to Belgium. I said, what in the world? But what it was is we did a lot of base security. I was in the infantry unit there in London, and we guarded the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe's, a 4-star general, a NATO base. We guarded the airport there, and it was. I made some, these are guys that were from London, a lot of them, and Adam Harville and Daryl Zanin and Chris Gayhart and Johnson, all these guys that I've already known, Alan Harris, all these guys that like police officers from London. And I'm like, man, this is gonna be awesome. We're gonna go over here and we're going to end up over in Iraq or Afghanistan at the time. We're like, it's going to happen. So, no, we sat in Belgium and did a European tour, basically. I got to go see some really cool places. I went to Bastogne, where the Battle of the Bulge was. I got to go to Normandy, Paris, London, England, all these cool places over there. But I was like, man, this is not exactly the war I was thinking we were fighting. So during that time while we were there, I mean, again, making lifelong friends. I mean, I can call these guys up right now and they will have my back if I need something. No problem. They've got my back. And I was during that time, I remember a call came, we would get the Sentinel Echo, and I saw where they were hiring police officers for London. So I applied for a police job out in Belgium, in Europe. So I'm like, hey, I want to do this. So when I got back, they were still hiring, and I went through the process and got hired and I was still in the Guard. So now I'm policing, or in police academy, still in the Guard. I've been gone from my wife for a year, and it's like, hey, honey, I'm home. I'm going to Richmond for police training now, but I'll be home every weekend. So I was like, again, a good woman who's put up with a lot of shenanigans with me. But so that was in 2002, and I've been with the London Police Department now for 20 years. And that's so that sense of service started as a young, 18, 19-year-old kid out of high school to this very day, 27 years later. I'm still feel a sense of this calling to serve stronger than ever. And I don't know if I can do anything but that, just to serve my community, my country in some way.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view this video?
I guess from a young man seeing my past, as an old man now looking back, and if I was talking to my son or anybody's son or daughter, the sense of service is a calling. And you're not going to make money. You're going to suffer. It's going to be hard. But if you go through it and that desire burns deep in you, when a challenge gets thrown at you, like an option of quitting is thrown at you, and you choose the hard way instead of the easy way, you'll go so much farther in life by taking that hard path and not making quitting an option. I owe all that to the success I've had from policing to my marriage, my family, my kids. If you'll just continue to work hard, and if you've got a goal, if your goal is, I want to be a Marine, I want to be a fill in the blank, and you don't get distracted by the outside saying, hey, you can quit. It's okay. And if you'll listen to that little voice inside you that desire that keeps burning in your heart and saying, I'm never going to quit. I've got a goal and a mission. Because I think about it, I could have quit. I could have said, this is too much for me. And I'd have been the most embarrassed person to this day. I would have felt like such a failure for my whole life. Everybody forgot. Everybody was like, oh, I get it. You were hurt. I get it. It wouldn't have mattered to me because I wanted to be a Marine. I wasn't going to let nothing stop me from that. Even if it was, I wanted to come home so bad. I missed my mom and I missed my dad. That strong desire of completing that mission, and that mission keeps going on today. If there's a mission need to be completed, I'm your guy. Let's get it done. We're always trying to take an easy way out sometimes. And if we just get after it, one of my favorite things they talk about in the Marines and the Army and the Navy, you name it, any branch, they say Oscar Mike, which just means on the move. And I've made it my mission to always be Oscar Mike, to be on mission and on the move. If we're on the move, if we're prepared, if we're training, if we're focused in, if we're ready, then anything's possible. So my advice would be never to quit and stay Oscar Mike.
Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to the interview?
I owe a lot of I've had some of my wife, my mother and father, they have been such supports, my children. And you learn a lot from past leaders. My favorite, and if I could be, if I'm able to be a leader, the way my chief warrant officer over my platoon, his name was Chief Warrant Officer 3 Garvin. I have no idea. So he's a warrant officer. We called him Gunners. So Gunner Garvin, if I could lead like him, I feel like I can, like I'll earn people's respect. The people that I lead now and at the PD, the people I serve. He was such a mentor and such a inspiration. The guy would run from the front with so much Copenhagen in his mouth. I'm like, how are you running like that? But he would talk to you, and he would lead from the front as well as the back. He'd do his office stuff. He was always looked great, on time with everything. But he also, when things got tough and there was things to do, he would be in coveralls, down in the pits and the nastiness. He would be out there helping, leading from the front. And I've always loved that about him. He was such an inspiration on that. And I'm like, man, if I could lead like that guy, I think I could get some things done. So the leadership qualities of some of the people that I would serve with, unbelievable. And I owe that. I would have never met that guy. I would have not been chief of police at London if it wasn't for the Marines, if it wasn't for the National Guard, and a good, solid foundation of caring, loving parents and a rock solid wife. And so I owe them a lot. But my military experience really set a course for me that I may not be the best but I know how to put very good people around me, and that's what the Marine Corps taught me. It's not about being the smartest and the best. It's like putting a team together that can focus in and get missions done. So that's about all I've got.